The chime of the bell beckons us into a sacred time. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston, where we widen love's circle by honoring the inherent worth and dignity of all. We extend a heartfelt and inclusive invitation to join us in meaningful worship and in service to the world. We greet all those who join us this morning. Those here in our sanctuary, all of our many online viewers, así como el creciente número de participantes bilingües que nos acompañan desde sus hogares. Mask wearing in the sanctuary is currently optional, but you are encouraged to continue to wear yours if you are more comfortable doing so. I invite newcomers to join us for coffee and conversation in Channing Hall after the service. And I invite members to seek out someone you have not yet met and make a new friend. Now, please join Dr. Rock for our first hymn.
Good morning. I invite you to open your teal hymnals to number 1017. And as you are finding that in your hymnal, you can rise in body or spirit before we get ready to sing. Building a New Way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are
Our call to worship comes from former president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, Susan Frederick Gray. If you are an immigrant, a refugee, undocumented, you are welcome here. If you are Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Christian, Zoroastrian, Buddhist, theist, or atheist, you are welcome here. If you are gay or straight, a woman or a man, transgender or queer, you are welcome here. If you have a disability, visible or invisible, you are welcome here. If you want for nothing, or if you struggle to make it through each day, you are welcome here. If you are heartbroken, angry, or afraid, you are welcome here. If you feel strong, powerful, and ready, you are welcome here. If you hold a dream of peace in your heart, you are welcome here. Whoever you are, you, your family, your whole self is welcome here. For this is a community of diversity and inclusion, a community of love and justice. It is good to be together, and come, friends, let us worship together.
Celebremos compartiendo nuestras vidas, encendiendo esta luz.
Thank you. Would you join with me in reciting the words to our congregational covenant, which are found printed in your order of service? Love is the spirit of our congregation. Service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to encourage one another. Thus do we covenant.
If you were here last week, you may remember that the young folks were able to confront and ask and some questions for the question box service. The kids are going to be able to stay here because we're having a multi-generational service. So there's lots and lots of cool things to do here. What they're going to do is leave John in the back. Before they do that, we want to tell them how we're going to tell them how important they are. And tell them we're going to tell them how important they are and how much we love them as the adults sing As You Go. This is the time during the service when we pause for contemplation. It is the time when we set aside rushing and distractions, the scurrying and the disruptions. And so, with intention and care, we carve out this time to enter into a time of quietness, a stillness we hope may be the threshold to a new peace and understanding. This is a time that some call meditation and others name prayer. Settle your body into a comfortable spot. Breathe with me as we gather to do the holy work of kinship and support. Open your mind, open your heart. God of many names and mystery beyond all our naming, we are grateful for this place of quiet so that we may link one to another and heart to heart in the stillness and calm of the moment. We have gathered to open our hearts, to hold the suffering, care for the mourning, and celebrate with the joyful. We echo the words of William Ellery Channing, who prayed, God deliver us all from prejudice and unkindness, and fill us with the love of truth and virtue. We have gathered to open our hearts, to pray over those who are struggling, and to give thanks for those whose spirits overflow to bolster those who are struggling. We echo the words of Hosea Ballou, who said, "It is my humble prayer that I may be of some use in my day and generation." We pray in the names of all those known and unknown, present and absent, remembered and forgotten. We pray in the names of all helpers of humankind. We pause now together to lift up that which sits heavy and light on our hearts. We send our love and support to the minister and the congregation at Community Unitarian Universalist Church in Plano. Their building was damaged in an act of arson 1 week ago. And in the book that we leave in the back for you to write your concerns and your joys, someone, and there's no surprise here, is praying for rain. We now turn to a practice inspired by African, indigenous, and pagan traditions. We say aloud or bring to mind those who we wish to be held by the loving embrace of this community. They are part of the great cloud of witness and memory, and we will, even if we do not know their names, hold them in our hearts. In this great cloud of witness and memory, amid this beloved community, we hear these names and hold them in our hearts. Let us remember the suffering and joy amid and among our community that we do not know. We pause in awe and wonder of the beauty, diversity, and mystery that is life. In the spirit of love, in the spirit of hope, and in the spirit of compassion, I invite each of you to enter into a time of silent prayer, meditation, or reflection.
Each week, our morning offering is shared with an organization that shares our Unitarian Universalist values and through which we may live out our principles in the world. This week, that organization is the Montrose Center. Since 1978, the Montrose Center has helped LGBTQ+ youth and adults live healthy, actualized lives with the tools and resources they need to feel affirmed. The organization provides an array of programs and services, including mental and behavioral health, anti-violence services, support groups, and specialized services for youth, seniors, and those living with HIV. It now operates the nation's largest LGBTQ-affirming, affordable senior living center in the nation, the Law Harrington Senior Living Center. As the politics of cruelty make living in Texas more and more dangerous for sexual minorities, especially the trans community, our support of organizations like the Montrose Center is more important than ever. Those in our sanctuary will find the instructions for text giving in the order of service, and those watching the live stream will see the instructions on your screen. Our regular Sunday morning offering collection invites us to weave a tapestry of love and action. We ask you to give generously. An offering will now be gratefully received.
My home
Please join with me in the words to dedicate our offering found in your order of service. To the work of this church, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives, and these are our offerings.
If you turn the page in your order of service, you'll see the readings that we're about to do, and then we'll come back and sing Building Bridges just before the sermon. Our first reading is from the writer and anthropologist Zora Neale Hurston's text, Mother Catherine. It is her account of the time she spent with a well-known and unorthodox religious leader in New Orleans' lower Ninth Ward. Theologically, Mother Catherine was a Universalist, but she had no connection with the organized Universalist movement. Here are Hurston's words. I spent 2 weeks with her and attended nightly and Sunday services continuously. Nothing was usual about these meetings. She invariably feeds the gathering. At the Sunday service, the big coffee urn was humming, and at a certain point, she blessed bread and broke it and sprinkled on a bit of salt. This she gave to everyone present. To the adults, she also gave a cup of coffee. It was something, too, to watch the faith it aroused in her followers. All during her sermons, 2 parrots were crying from their cages. A white cockatoo would scream when the shouting grew loud. 3 canary birds were singing and chirping happily all through the service. A donkey, a mother goat and her kid, numbers of hens, a sheep, all wandered in and out of the service without seeming out of place. A Methodist or Baptist church, or one of any denomination whatever, would have been demoralized by any one of these animals. 2 dogs fought for a place beside the heater. 3 children under 3 years of age played on the platform in the rear without distracting the audience. The blue and red-robed saint stood immobile in her place directly behind the speaker, and the world moved on. Mother Catherine does not crush the individual. She encourages individuality. There's an air of gaiety about the enclosure. All of the animals are treated with tenderness. All of her followers are her children. She has as many of one race as the other. I got all kinds of children, but I am their mother. Some of them are saints. Some of them are convicts and jailbirds. Some of them kill babies in their bodies. Some of them walks the streets at night, but they are all my children. God got all kinds. How come I can't love all of mine? So says the beautiful Spirit. Now, y'all go home in faith. Here ends the first reading.
Our second reading is from the 5 Points of the New Theology by James Freeman Clarke. The 4th point of the New Theology will be salvation by character. Salvation means the highest peace and joy of which the soul is capable. It means heaven here and heaven hereafter. This salvation has been explained as something outside of us, some outward gift, some outward condition, place, or circumstance. We speak of heaven as if we could be made happy solely by being put in a happy place. But the true heaven is a state of the soul. Here ends the second reading.
I invite you to open up your teal hymnals to number 1023, Building Bridges. We're going to sing this in canon or in a round. So First, we'll sing it all together. Then I'll have you all on this side in front of me sing with me, part 1. We'll sing it 2 times. And then you all will come in with Ken and Symphony on part 2. Okay? Please rise in body or in spirit, and let's join together as we sing. 1 time together, and then twice in and in.
It's good to be in the pulpit today. I enjoyed last week's question box service. Always grateful to get a sense of your spiritual quests and institutional concerns. And it's fun to have a little bit of time for something slightly more spontaneous. But I'm also appreciative of the opportunity to have a more traditional service this Sunday. Ralph Waldo Emerson once advised aspiring preachers that the true preacher deals out to the people his life passed through the fire of thought. Preparing and delivering sermons is part of my spiritual practice. The opportunity to reflect in conversation with the community and a tradition upon what Emerson called the age of the world, the state of our congregation, and how goes it with my soul, in the hopes that I might stir something within yours. Emerson's gendered language, though, is thoroughly out of date in a contemporary Unitarian Universalist pulpit, though not, I fear, a Southern Baptist one. And what seems to be a strangely unbiblical move, the Southern Baptist Convention, as you probably know, recently voted to expel 2 congregations with female leaders and limit all pastoral and ministerial roles to men. Paul, the apostle, would have been shocked. Read through his letters in the Christian New Testament, and you'll find him constantly and praising and encouraging women's leadership. In his letter to the Romans alone, we find him praising the ministry of Phoebe and recommending that the congregation in Rome support her in any business in which she may need your help. Sending greetings to Prisca, Aquila, Mary, who worked so hard for you, Junia, eminent amongst the apostles, Patrobas, Julia, and Olympus. Almost a dozen women leaders in all. He probably would have been significantly less surprised to learn that we Unitarian Universalists have been ordaining women since the middle of the 19th century. When Olympia Brown became a minister back in 1863, she was the first woman to be ordained with the consent of her denomination. For us, the thought that a woman could not lead a church is singularly strange. This June, after all, marked the election of the Reverend Dr. Sophia Bentoncourt as the president of our association. She's the second woman elected to that position and the first queer woman of African descent to lead a major denomination in the United States. A couple of weeks later, the United Church of Christ followed our suit when they elected the first black woman, the Reverend Karen Georgia Thompson, to the presidency of their denomination, making them the first major Christian denomination to be led by a woman of African descent. I mention all of this in part because the age of the world in which we live is one of increasing social fracture. Religious institutions are not immune to this dynamic. Entities like the Southern Baptist Convention seem to be more content to focus on conservatism than Christianity. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, after all, was written at the request of one of Chloe's people, Chloe being a female leader of that church. And when I read news of their internal deliberations, I cannot help but think of the political philosopher Corey Robin. He observed that conservatism is best understood as a meditation on the felt experience of having power, seeing it threatened, and trying to win it back. The dynamic, he noted, plays out as much in the private sphere as it does in the public one. And a key to understanding the rise of white working-class conservatism is recognizing that the leadership of women, people of color, people of African descent, and others threatens, in their words, how a father governs his family. We Unitarian Universalists, of course, welcome all sorts of families and make no assumption that the family needs to be a patriarchal institution. Families can be matriarchies, queer, or follow other arrangements, be they connected by blood or formed by choice. I suspect that if you're here this morning, it's in part because you understand that love is love, and that any consenting adult relationship united by love deserves to be celebrated. I also know that some of you are with us this morning for the very reason that religious institutions like the Southern Baptist Convention will not celebrate the fullness of your gifts or the beauty of your relationships. And I suspect that you are also here with us because our Unitarian Universalist tradition demands that we do. That's why partially I suspect we have a growing congregation these days. Oftentimes in July and August, we have a lot of people who come church shopping, looking for a religious community to join. And this has especially been true as of late. The last several weeks, the sanctuary hasn't quite felt like a summer sanctuary. We've been having almost as many people here between the two services as we have had in autumn, typically have in autumn. A couple of Sundays in June and July, in fact, we've had even better attendance than we have had on Christmas Eve. Not today, sadly, but and in just this past 2 weeks, we've had 3 people join the congregation and another 20 people who are someplace in the membership process. And our growth hasn't only been numerical, we've been growing in diversity as well. During our most recent meetings, the Spanish language ministry team has welcomed new people and new community partners. The program seems likely to expand in exciting ways over the coming months. In my conversations with new members and visitors, it seems like a great number of you are just learning something about our faith tradition. Unitarian Universalism is, after all, not widespread in Texas. This is not Boston. You come seeking community, spiritual grounding, and an antidote to the politics of cruelty. You're also not exactly certain, oftentimes, what Unitarian Universalism is, so this morning seems like a good a time as any to offer a little bit of theological orientation. Certainly, the most important things to know are expressed in the first two phrases of our congregational covenant. Love is the spirit of our congregation. Service is our prayer. We seek to be a community of radical inclusion. We want to be a place where all are welcome to bring the fullness of themselves. We're devoted to building the world we dream about. It is a world filled with beauty in which all people, all being, can be nurtured and sustained, and the planet is not threatened by the climate catastrophe, where the politics of compassion rather than the politics of cruelty govern. Beyond that, there is our name, Unitarian Universalist. Today, our movement is non-creedal. We do not require our members to adhere to a statement of faith, such as those found in conventional Christian congregations, to join our community. Yet, curiously, for a non-creedal tradition, the words Unitarian and Universalist are each tied to a specific religious doctrine. Unitarianism symbolizing a belief in the unity of God, and with that belief, the affirmation of the humanity of Jesus. Universalists indicated a trust in God's universal love to all creatures, as one of our early religious ancestors put it. More than 60 years ago, the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America joined forces to form the Unitarian Universalist Association. The historic theologies of the two traditions are neither identical nor fully compatible. Like all blended families, over the years, our congregations have had to make sense of their differing theological traditions and inheritances. One particular theological perspective on which our religious ancestors did not agree had to do with that uncomfortable word of salvation. The view of Universalists in the 19th and 18th centuries was summarized in an early article of faith as the belief that after death, God will finally restore the whole human race to happiness. Everyone, in other words, gets to go to heaven. You might recall Mark Morrison Reed's description of this historic vision. He's described how Universalism came to be called the gospel of God's success. Picturesquely spoken, the image was that of the last unrepentant sinner being dragged screaming and kicking into heaven, unable to resist the power and love of the Almighty. The last unrepentant sinner being dragged kicking and screaming into heaven. The Unitarians had a somewhat different view. They did not believe in universal salvation. Instead, they celebrated what William Ellery Channing called likeness to God. This was the understanding that each and every person was born with the divine spark within. The task of the religious community was to help us in uncovering that spark, tend to the flame, so that it might shine more and more brightly until eventually we might achieve what James Freeman Clarke, another 19th century Unitarian, named salvation by character. We can signify each approach to salvation with a single word: the gospel of God's success, being; salvation by character, becoming. Being and becoming. Both suggest a purpose for our religious communion, a way in which we are called to care for each other and nurture an alternative to the politics of cruelty. Being. The theologian Matthew Fox has described this perspective as a narrative around our births. Contrary to the Christian doctrine of original sin, which maintains we enter the world as blotches upon existence, Fox maintains we burst into the world as original blessings. I'm fairly certain that any of you who have had the privilege to give birth to a child or have been privileged to be present at a child's birth know this instinctually. We attest to it in our hymnal when we sing, "Each night a child is born is a holy night." Being. We aspire to be a community in which everyone is welcome. It is, as I said in our call to worship, which was drawn from the words of Susan Frederick Gray, if you are an immigrant or refugee, undocumented, you are welcome here. If you are Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Christian, Zoroastrian, Buddhist, a theist, or an atheist, you are welcome here. If you are gay or straight, a man or a woman, transgender or queer, you are welcome here. Whoever you are, you, your family, your whole self is welcome here. Being. Those of you who are, like me, over a certain age might remember this perspective summarized in the popular 70s children's song by Marlo Thomas. It promised, "You and me are free to be you and me." Free to be you and me. The most vivid description of a community devoted to the proposition of universal salvation I've run across is in Zora Neale Hurston's brief text, Mother Catherine. As Scott noted, Hurston was a pivotal literary figure in the first half of the 20th century. A leading light of the Harlem Renaissance, she trained as an anthropologist, and a number of her works observed black religion in the South and in the Caribbean. Mother Catherine was one of those. It describes the Church of Mother Catherine Seal, a spiritual leader in New Orleans' lower Ninth Ward, who held a Universalist theology. Completely unconnected to our movement, Hurston's descriptions of Mother Catherine's religious community offers a picture of Universalist heaven. Not only are all kinds of children welcome, but all being is held up as a blessing. Worship is not just a matter of human praise and exuberance. There are canary birds singing and chirping happily, a donkey, a mother goat with her kid, numbers of hens, a sheep, 2 dogs. I'm not sure who could handle such an environment. Probably not us. But Mother Catherine created one because God got all kinds. How come I can't love all of mine? Being. Here is where the Unitarian objections might come in. Yes, you are an original blessing. Yes, you are welcome here. Yes, you and me are free to be you and me. Yes, love is the spirit of the congregation. Yes, 1,000 times yes to all of that. But it is not enough. Service is our prayer, and to read a little further down our covenant, to seek the truth. Becoming, everyone is welcome, but we have not already built the world we dream about. Each of us always has work to do to become a better person. Religion should be about transformation, helping each of us uncover the spark of the divine, the highest potential that resides within. And here I fear we struggle. In our efforts to build an inclusive community, we expect sometimes people to arrive already at the point where they are recognizing everyone as original blessing. We want white folks like me to have already given up our frightful addiction to the poison of white supremacy. We want men to have already moved beyond toxic masculinity. We want straight people to fully accept transgender folks, even as they are just coming to understand that gender is fluid and, like race, a social construct. This, of course, comes with a paradox. If we're going to fully live into our vision of radical inclusion, then we have to have an environment where people who are not traditionally part of the white male dominant culture are safe from constant microaggressions and even real aggression. At a time of rising misogyny, we need to have women feel safe within our community. At a time when white supremacist and nativist movements are growing, people of color and immigrants need to know that this community is their community. At a time when LGBT communities are under assault, folks from those communities need to know that they are an original blessing. At a time of growing economic inequality, when union organizers are targeted and fired by corporations like Starbucks, working class people need to know that there are religious communities that support working class power. The challenge then is, how do we do it as a congregation? Hold these two things, being and becoming, in tension. I'm reminded of the account of a conversion experience that James Luther Adams, a great Unitarian theologian from the 20th century, offered in one of his essays. It's about a racial bigot. It seems that in the early 1950s, this man was trying to block the First Unitarian Church of Chicago, one of the few truly historic multiracial congregations in our tradition, from committing not just to racial integration, but active outreach to the city's African American community. He was on the board at the time, and after hours of arguing with his fellow board members, he finally came to the realization that the way forward for his congregation was through intentional outreach. And then he confessed, when asked why, he said, well, part of the purpose of the church is to get a hold of people like me and change them. The purpose of the church is to get a hold of people like me and change them. I hesitate to imagine how much damage he did, how many micro and macro aggressions he committed to the members of the congregation who were people of color before he came to that realization. Being and becoming, the two visions of salvation are in tension. Perhaps it's simply like that line from Fyodor Dostoevsky: love and action is a harsh and dreadful thing compared to love in dreams. Playing the role of the preacher, I feel like I'm sometimes cast as a person with answers, but love and action is a harsh and dreadful thing compared to love and dreams. And I really just have questions, discomforts, and an urgent need to, though the road be rough and rocky, continue on a path of both being and becoming. Being and becoming. I'm not really sure how we do this thing that we try to do where we welcome everyone, confess that we have work to do, and somehow, some way, still have patience and compassion for each other. Some of what I know about it, like so much of what I know, though, comes not from church, but from my time in the labor movement. Now, I will confess that the story that I'm about to share may not connect entirely with congregational life, but it's one of those things that passes through the fire of my thought over and over again when I consider the challenge of nurturing a multiracial congregation. You see, congregations have a choice as to whether or not they want to be multiracial. Even today, 20 years into the 21st century, Sunday morning remains the most segregated hour of the week. Unions, however, do not have such a luxury. They have to be multiracial. If workers are going to come together and build power effectively against the powers and principalities of the hour, against the Howard Schultzes and Jeff Bezoses, against the massive wealth disparity that exists in our society, then they have to include everyone, because the workforce includes everyone. Well, about 20 years ago, I was involved in an effort to build a union in Chicago. And one of the first things you do when you're trying to start a union is you sit down and think about who are the leaders at the shop you're trying to organize or the industry you're trying to organize. Now, these leaders are not necessarily the people who hold positions of power. They're not necessarily the managers or the shift supervisors or the like. Instead, they're the folks who other people look up to and respect, and to some extent, yes, follow. If you can get those people, those leaders, to support the union, then the people who respect them will often join the effort. One of our tasks as organizers was to try and get different leaders to join the union. One day, the job fell to me to go and talk to someone who was known to have a particularly unpleasant personality. He was an older white guy who had a reputation for making disparaging remarks about just everyone who was not white or male. I was sent to talk to him because, well, as you can tell, I am white and male. We met in a rough bar on the west side, the kind where the floors are a bit sticky and your choices of a beverage are either a cheap beer or a cheap whiskey. And the first part of our conversation pretty much went exactly how you would expect it. He said about just about every sort of disgusting thing one could imagine. But finally, after listening to this barrage for probably about an hour, I was able to somehow turn the conversation to work. How is it at work? I asked him. What would you change if you could? How can a union help you make changes? Who needs to be in the union for you to make those changes? And then somehow, some way, that last question, that helped him to have a little bit of a light bulb go off. And I convinced him to join the union, and he went on to be one of our best organizers, going out and bringing in to the union all of those people who he had said such horrible things about. It was quite an experience of being and becoming. Quite a learning about what happens when people are challenged to get outside of their comfort zones and both be and become. Because with him and many other leaders and folks in the union, those workers were able to cooperate together and within a year win the first wage gain that anyone in their industry in their country had won in more than a decade. And they were even able to form an LGBTQ caucus to address the needs of members of those communities at work. Becoming. I still have a lot of questions about that experience, but I suspect that somehow, some way, the path to building a multiracial congregation and a functioning multiracial democracy lies through moments like that. For it began with the recognition that somehow, some way, we're all in this together. We're all some sort of original blessing. But it also rested upon the acknowledgement that we each have work to do. We're not here perfectly formed. We're each challenged if we want to build the world we dream about, to become better, to live in discomfort, and little by little uncover the spark within. That it might be so, I invite the congregation to say, Amen.
All right, everybody, for our final hymnal today, we will be singing from the Teal Book, number 1028, The Fire of Commitment. If you will please rise in body and or spirit and we will sing hymn number 1028. From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. With the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion needs to call us on our way. When we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living brings a song both great and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion needs to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion needs to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can
Would you join with me in reciting the words while we extinguish the chalice found in your order of service? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Being and becoming. May we be a community of radical acceptance, just as we challenge each other to become our best selves. Go in peace, go in love. May our lives be a blessing. Amen. Thank you so much for watching our service today. We're glad you're part of our online community, where we welcome people who are diverse in faith, ethnicity, history, as well as gender identity and sexual orientation. There are many different ways you can get involved in our community. One you can do right now is by clicking like below or subscribing to our channel. If you're interested in joining our congregation, please email us at membership@firstuuhouston.org. Thanks so much for joining us.